Welcome to our Wednesday devotion for this week. We're going to talk about the young king who wouldn't listen. Now, Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles, the chronicler takes information from 1st and 2nd Kings as well as 1st and 2nd Samuel. So I'm going to go back to 1 Kings chapter 12, but I'm also going to be in 2nd Chronicles chapter 12 as well. Now, when we read the book of Proverbs, which was written for the most part by King Solomon, you'll notice that many times, especially in the opening chapters, Solomon wrote, "My son." Now, I wondered who Solomon had in mind. Were those words of wisdom meant to train his own son, Rehoboam? And I wonder if Rehoboam disregarded the words of his father and rather followed the example of his father. You know the old saying, "Do as I say, not do as I do"? Well, that might have been where he was. In other words, rather than doing what his father Solomon said, Rehoboam decided to do what his father had done. And we find some evidence that this was sadly true. Now, Rehoboam was 41 years old when he began to reign, 1 Kings 14:21. Relatively a young man to become the king of an entire nation. He reigned for 17 years in Jerusalem. He came to the throne during a serious crisis in the kingdom. Very often, leaders reveal what they are made of in difficult circumstances, because challenges bring out the fiber and the character of a person. Now I want you to notice 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 1 to 14. We see the counsel that he seeks. Now, faced with trouble in his kingdom, Rehoboam went to Shechem, evidently to see if he could conciliate the people. There's a crisis going on. He's trying to bring them back together. The word reached Egypt, where Jeroboam was in exile since his revolt against Solomon. And so he returned to Israel. Jeroboam was immediately appointed to be the people's spokesman. And Jeroboam described for Rehoboam the situation and the concern of the people in 1 Kings chapter 12, verses 2 through 4. They were saying, "Now your dad made it hard on us. If you'll make our burden lighter, we will serve you." Now, the people really did have a legitimate grievance. When Solomon built the temple, he conscripted about 30,000 people into hard labor. In addition, the people were under heavy taxation, and rather than being a shepherd of the people as the king of Israel were intended to be, Solomon was a slave driver. By the way, folks, government is intended to be a blessing, not a burden. The people were calling for servant leadership. Now, Rehoboam was asking for some time to think over their case. And I believe that. Good leaders shouldn't make snap judgments. But we don't have any evidence. He asked for 3 days. There is not any evidence that he spent his 3 days in prayer. Nor did he ask any men of God about his wishes. Now, he did seek counsel. So good, so far. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14. Proverbs 15:22 emphasizes the importance of seeking counsel. So first of all, he did go to his father's old advisors. 1 Kings 12, 6 and 7. I want to tell you something. Age does not make you an expert on everything. But in this case, he did get good advice. The chapter 12, verse 8 indicates that Rehoboam had already made up his mind. When you have made up your mind, chances are you're going to look around until you find somebody to agree with you. And after rejecting the counsel from the elders, he consulted his peers, those that would have been of his age bracket. And their advice was, well, just show them who's boss. These young guys had the mistaken idea that people existed for them. They demanded to be respected. I hear people today saying that they demand to be respected. Let me tell you something. You earn respect. You don't demand respect. These young men were caught up in the privileges of leadership instead of the responsibilities of leadership. So Rehoboam got some bad advice that he delivered to the people 3 days later. His tough stance was rejected by all of Israel except for the tribe of Judah. And then in 1 Kings chapter 12, verses 15 to 33, we see the conflict that he sees. The result of Rehoboam's foolishness was a divided kingdom. It split into the northern kingdom known as Israel and the southern kingdom known as Judah. Rehoboam tore down in 3 days what had taken his father and grandfather 80 years to build. He was facing rebellion. And in a stunning lack of statesmanship, Rehoboam followed up his tough talk by sending out the tax collector, whom the people stoned to death. And Rehoboam, soon as that happened, I mean, he got in his chariot and he hightailed it back to the palace. Rehoboam still didn't get it. And he decided to go to war to bring the northern tribes back into line in chapter 12, verse 21. But God stepped in chapter 12, verse 22. And the prophet Shemaiah told the king that the Lord forbade him from taking up arms in chapter 12, 23, and 24. So God overruled the immature king to reveal that the split of the nation was part of his plan. And because of the foolish decision of young Rehoboam, the king who wouldn't listen, more idolatry, more apostasy, more false religion saturated the nation. He caused unbelievable conflict. And in place of he caused unbelievable conflict. And then in 2 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 1 through 16, the change that he supervises. 2 Chronicles reveals some more details of Rehoboam's tragic reign. 5 years later, with the people of Judah in increased idolatry, God used the king of Egypt, Shishak, as a reality check. 2 Chronicles 12, 2 and 4. Now Shishak was knocking on Jerusalem's gates when the prophet Shemaiah let Rehoboam know this was no accident in verse 5. So the people humbled themselves and God relented in verse 6 and 7. Judah was humiliated, though God spared them. Shishak was able to loot the palace grounds, carry away 300 solid gold shields Solomon had made. Now, by the way, gold is pure metal. It's the standard by which value is measured. But here was a king who made foolish decisions and who led the people into idolatry and sin. And in place of the gold shields, the country was in such a mess. Rehoboam substituted shields of brass, a cheap imitation. When Rehoboam died at the age of 58, the Bible declared he did evil in the sight of the Lord. What a terrible epitaph to have read or put on your gravestone. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. All of the readings we have on Rehoboam and those few words wrap up his entire life. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. So I ask you today, what would be the one sentence God would write about you if you were to die today? Rehoboam left a divided nation, a nation that was poorer than when he found it. We are going to leave a legacy to our home, to our church, to our nation, and to our generation. Let's be sure we leave real shields of gold, not fake imitations. Think about that as you live your life. What kind of legacy are you leaving behind? Is it a godly one, or is it a secular, worldly one? Well, come join us this Sunday. We would love to have you in our service. 8:30 is our traditional service. 9:30 we have our Sunday school hour, and then at 10:30 we have our contemporary service. We would love to have you visit us. Now, if you can't make it, watch us via the live stream. We'd love to have you be a part of it in one way or other. May God bless you and have a great day.